Unless you tuned out Donald Trump in his final frenetic campaign blitz, you probably remember him barnstorming across Florida, stoking the fears of Latino voters with his nightmare threat that Joe Biden and company would, in Trump's words, turn America into communist Cuba or socialist Venezuela. Pure and simple scaremongering, but it worked with enough Latino voters so that Trump cut down the normal Democratic majority in the Miami area and carried Florida. But what's fascinating and telling is that nearly 1 million of those same voters rejected Trump's anti-government, pro-business economics and voted in favor of a new $15 minimum wage for the state of Florida. As you can imagine, Trump's business allies in the Florida Chamber of Commerce fought bitterly against that measure, said it would cost jobs, shut down businesses, raise the cost of living. But a supermajority of Florida's voters, 61%, rejected that business self-pleading. Nearly 6.4 million Florida voters adopted and approved a plan to boost the wage in Florida from $8.56 an hour right now to $10 an hour minimum next year, adding $1 a year every year until 2026 when it hits $15. And that was a bigger majority of voters than even Trump won himself. As you can imagine, organized labor was behind that move. But what's striking and interesting is that the biggest instigator and supporter and mover behind the minimum wage movement was an Orlando businessman named John Morgan. Why? Because Morgan says it doesn't matter whether you're on the left or the right. If you're not doing well, the biggest issue is income inequality, and Morgan says the states have to do something about it. And in Florida, it's going to make a difference. The Florida Institute, a progressive think tank, estimates that about a quarter of Florida's labor force, 2.5 million people, are going to benefit. And there's going to be less disparity in pay for women and minorities. Florida's move is just the latest state out of 29 to adopt higher minimum wages in the campaign for what labor calls the fight for $15. It broke into the open about 8 years ago in 2012 in New York, Seattle, and other cities, spread across the nation like wildfire. First victory, interestingly enough, came in the tiny town of SeaTac. That's the town that surrounds the airport for Seattle and Tacoma. They had a lot of workers there in retail trades and doing menial jobs, and they wanted a higher minimum wage and adopted $15. Seattle and other cities picked it up. But in Washington, Congress turned a deaf ear. Republicans and conservatives were dead set against any move to raise the federal minimum wage of $7.25 an hour, which was set back in 2007. Even in 2014, when Barack Obama suggested a halfway improvement, go from $7 roughly to a little over $10, the Republicans in the Senate rejected him with a party line vote. It went nowhere. And with Washington frozen, paralyzed by gridlock, it's the states that moved into the power vacuum. And what's even more striking is that it was people power in 11 states, including Florida, people power, not the governor, not the legislature, that was the driving force behind the move to raise the minimum wage, either through ballot initiatives, popular referendums, and they won majorities, even in some of the most conservative red states on the map. Arizona, Alaska, Arkansas, Missouri, Ohio, South Dakota. But the boldest moves came in a bunch of other states who adopted the $15 minimum, get there step by step, year by year, by 2022, 23, 24, 25, whatever. States like California, Connecticut, Illinois, Maryland, Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey, and Washington, D.C. Only 8 states, but they have clout. They cover nearly 40% of the American workforce. And another 21 states raised their minimum wage in the last 6 years above the federal level. And 15 of them not only raised their minimum wage, but they have an automatic escalator that kicks it up to match the cost of living increase every January 1st. So here you have a consistent message across the country in red states and blue states, and from masses of people majorities of Americans, regardless of political stripe, Democratic, Republican, or Independent, saying something has to be done to cure economic inequality and to give people more livable wages. Now that poses a challenge for the new Biden administration. Will the new president take the initiative and push Congress hard to increase the federal minimum? And will the Republicans get on board with a majority of American opinion? According to opinion polls, 2/3 of Americans favor the $15 minimum wage. Washington, will you wake up or not?